So before we even begin the podcast, I've got some special news that I think you're going to be jazzed about.
Yeah, you guys are having a baby?
No, not that special.
Wow, what?
But really big. So this today is the first podcast after 800 that we're doing. We're now in our 801st podcast.
Holy smokes.
I didn't realize last week in the podcast that was number 800, but I just wanted to kind of name and celebrate.
All right,
That's
buddy.
pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
800.
Yeah.
You know, it's really good that you don't start out with these goals, right? If somebody sat me down and said, hey, you want to go in the studio and do 800 podcasts? You'd be like, no, never. What?
Yes.
But over the years.
Yeah, week by week.
Wow.
One at a time.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the 801st Wild at Heart podcast, everybody. It is the week of December 9th, and we are in the second week of Advent. And I just want to thank everyone. Thank you so much. I mean, to mark 800 podcasts over the years. Thank you for being our listeners, our friends, being on the journey with us together, processing things together, seeking God together. And thank you for your support to us. It means the world to us, and it allows us to carry forward all the work that we're doing in the world. I just chatted with a beautiful guy who has been taking the Wild at Heart boot camp, the basic men's retreat that we do. They have been taking it into prisons for 10 years. I didn't even know it. Group of volunteers going after guys' hearts in the hardest of places, bringing healing, redemption, and all that's for free. We give away all our stuff. And the way we're able to do that is through your generosity. So thank you. Thank you for everyone who's been supporting us this year. If you can help us through December, that would be amazing. But I just want to say thanks for your support. And we're going to enter into 3 kind of holiday podcasts here in Advent, just Alan and I this week. But we'll get some feminine voices in the studio for the next couple of weeks, okay? We got it. We got to hear the feminine perspective on the holidays. Now, because we are in the second week of Advent, it would probably be a really good idea to take our pause at the beginning. I mean, I'm just guessing, there's a lot going on in your life right now. So we use the pause as a reset. We just use it like literally neurologically, it's a reset. For your soul, it's a reset. It works. It works. And that's why we do it. So we pause, we let things go, we breathe, we tune in, come back to ourselves, and we come back to God and His presence with us. So let's do that. Yes, Father. Yes, I am carrying a lot. And I just ask your help right now to lay it down. Would you remind me right now of all the things that are weighing on me, all that my heart and soul are carrying, maybe without me even being aware of it this morning, or wherever you are in your week, friends. Would you help me? Help me, God, to lay down people, projects, and the holidays. Take a moment, friends, and let it go. And then why I'm doing this, God, is so that I can come back to you, ask you to restore me, renew my perspective today. Use this podcast to give me a whole new perspective on things. In your name we pray. Amen. Oh, that's good. That's good. Whew, I need that every time. I don't think I need it until you get into it.
Right.
And you needed it driving in this morning.
Big time. I was stuck in traffic that wasn't moving at all with an accident that was like 5 miles down the road.
That's
And
what I
so,
heard. The whole
yeah,
highway was shut
the whole
down.
highway was shut down. Exit ramps were, just
Right.
too busy to get on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the holidays, right?
Right.
Yeah. The chaos and the thwarting and all of that. So Alan texts us here, Dave, our producer, and me, and says, "Hey guys, I'm stuck in traffic." And I just said, "You know what, Alan? Just take a long pause." Well,
Yeah.
we are in the second week of Advent.
And
Yeah. Hey, thanks for the decorations, Dave. Really, really nice job. Here.
we were laughing at the beginning that this is such a dude way to do the lights, which we love, where the cord's going down diagonally to the plug-in, and it just brings a lot of joy.
The ladies were here, it would be a little prettier. So before we get into, I want to give everybody a really helpful tool this week, something I think that's just going to, really help you navigate the holidays. Before we get into that, I'm just curious, like 2 weeks out from Christmas today, I mean, this right now, you're about 2 weeks out from Christmas.
Right.
How are you doing?
I'm feeling behind, and I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
And not necessarily behind on gifts to buy or, things like that, but behind in a soul level of, I always want to slow down and savor Christmas. It's such a special, beautiful time here in Colorado, the snow and just the atmosphere. And I always sense that I'm 2 days behind. Like I have this in my imagination kind of wish of, if it could be 2 days earlier now, but I'm where I am, I could just finally breathe and get ahead. And it's not a helpful thought, because it keeps me out of the moment, feeling like right now time is too scarce.
Okay. So I'm already behind enjoying the holidays, and I'm not going to be able to catch up.
Right. And so every day feels like I either have to run faster or get further behind.
Okay. Anybody relate to run faster through the holidays? Everybody relate to feeling behind. Okay. Here's what's really helpful about that is that's a narrative that you are telling yourself. Okay. That's a story you're telling yourself. And this is the tool we want to give you all this week. I don't know that Brene Brown was the one who coined it, but she certainly uses it. If you get online, you get in the therapeutic community, this device of the story that I'm telling myself. Okay.
Interesting.
Because human beings, we are made for story. Narrative is the way we organize our lives. It's just fascinating that, you have like the Jewish theologian and philosopher Elie Wiesel. He says he believes the reason that God made humanity is because he loves stories.
Wow.
Isn't that
That's
cool?
cool. Yeah.
And Alan, your side gig is coaching people on how to write their stories, right?
Right. Or how to tell a story in a fiction manner, a novel.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
How to tell compelling stories.
Right.
This is so deep in humanity because, as Eugene Peterson used to remind us, we live in narrative. We live in story. The reality actually has a story shape to it, right? You have a beginning, you have an end, you have a plot, you have characters.
Yes.
Every day when you walk out your door, you're stepping into a story.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And then the stories of our lives only make sense within a larger story context. But now the neuroscience is finding that we organize memory and we organize understanding in the shape of narrative. Isn't that fascinating that the human brain even needs, story structure? Okay.
Yes.
So the idea, gang, is this. We are constantly telling ourselves stories. It's how we interpret reality. It's how we contextualize things.
Yes.
It's how we sort it out for our own soul. So you're telling yourself a story that's, oh man, I'm already behind. And my longing for what I want to experience over the holidays, I'm already short.
Well, and then every situation that comes up during the day falls into that interpretation if I'm not careful, because then somebody says, hey, do you have 30 minutes? Well, instead of being curious, God, what are you up to here?
Yeah.
It's, here we go, 30 more minutes.
I just
I'm
lost
further behind.
another. Yeah.
I've lost more.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge, because as we begin to tell ourselves these stories, and they might be stories about our childhood, they might be stories about current difficulties, our future. We tell ourselves stories about the future. They do become sort of like self-fulfilling prophecy, because they become the lenses through which you see everything else, right? Like, okay, so we are now in a complete texting culture. And the texting culture has framed the way that we navigate day to day. And because of the texting culture, most of the expectation is you're going to hear back right away. If not instantly, then pretty soon, right? Okay.
Right.
So, but the thing is, you text your boss and you say, hey, I'm running late. Sorry, had to drop my kid off at childcare. I'm on my way. I'm almost there. Silence. And you go, oh no. And you start telling yourself
He's
a
so
story.
mad.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm going to lose my job. I'm in so much trouble. When what you don't know is that he was actually getting on a flight, right? Or your boss was she was walking into a meeting, and you don't hear from her for an hour. This is my life. People text me, but I'm walking into things like a studio, and they don't hear from me for a couple hours, and they form narratives. Oh, I'm so sorry. So the text that I come out to after the studio is, I'm so sorry I said that. Was that okay?
Yeah.
Because they've already formed a narrative.
Yes.
Right. We do this all the time. Or if people leave you out of a text thread.
Yes.
Right. Let's say you and a group of friends have got a text thread and and then somebody just hits the wrong button and uses a different group, and you go, oh my gosh, they don't like me anymore.
Yeah. Or I've gotten text where I've already written the narrative in my mind of what that person is going to say.
Yep.
And if it's negative, John, I won't open that text for a day sometimes, because I don't want to, because I know it's going to be negative. I'm not ready to handle it. I just want to put it off. And then when I eventually open the text, it's like, sounds great. Thanks.
Right.
And I've spent a whole day in a narrative that had nothing to do with reality.
Yeah. Okay, gang. So we do this all the time. We are telling ourselves stories. We're contextualizing. We're, speculating. Yeah. And as I was doing some reading and some research on this online, in the therapeutic world, using this tool, one therapist said, the important realization about our internal narratives is that we're almost always wrong. It's just so good to put that out there, okay? So small narrative, really, really simple narrative. I have an electrical problem right now. Some wires got crossed and fried in a junction box at my house. And it's just I think it's a little bit beyond my skill set. I'm not sure I should get in there. It's 220 and so I need a guy to come out. Well, he keeps stalling and he keeps delaying. And now I have formed a narrative that he is never coming, and I'm just stuck with this. There's this growing anger when I don't know the story. I don't know why he hasn't shown up yet. Maybe his child's sick.
Yes.
Maybe his mom's in the hospital, right?
Yes.
But we form these narratives, right?
Oh, totally. There was a couple of months ago, we were waiting on an appliance delivery person, and it was so fascinating to watch the dynamics. So Gray and Chase, my two sons, and I were in conversation, and Kelly's in the kitchen and she's in the conversation too. And he was an hour late, and it was the last delivery of the day. And so I start thinking, I don't have his phone number. I start thinking it's not going to happen. Like he's forgotten or I don't know what. And he calls and he says, basically, yep, I can get there, but it's going to be about another hour. And everybody's listening to me on the phone with him. And I said, well, it would have been great to have heard 2 hours ago that you were running late, and he got frustrated and hung up on me and never came that night. And so the fascinating thing was my two sons and I were having the conversation of, yeah, I mean, he just took a break to have dinner somewhere, or he went to the pub, or and Kelly's like, no, he probably got stuck at a house and was under some piece of equipment and was doing his very best and couldn't come over. And they were like, no, you called him on it, Dad. But the narrative, right, going through, and I'm assuming worst case, she's assuming goodness in the best case.
Yeah.
And it all was playing out lifetime. Like, how do we see the world, the people around us when something doesn't happen that we expect? And like you were saying with your friend, like, I tend to go worst case.
Yeah.
And Kelly tends to go best case. And so it's always in front of me of how am I interpreting this? Because I like her interpretation better.
God bless her. That's actually beautiful. Okay. So we had a blow up this year in our small group, and it was largely misunderstanding. But what happened was Stace and I found out that some members of the small group were talking about us. They needed to process something, which is fine, right? They needed to process something that had happened in group that Stace and I had been a part of, without us being in the room. And that's okay. Like, how do we handle this? What's the right interpretation? But all I heard from a text was, hey, we needed to talk about this without you guys there. Hope that's okay. I'm gone. Because now it's like the doomsday narrative.
Yeah.
And then it's the offense narrative of like, what? Like, and I literally started forming this entire storyline of what our friends, for heaven's sakes, were coming to believe about us, which can be a really painful thing, right?
Yeah.
That, like, what your friends think about you when they don't invite you to the party. Maybe they just forgot. Maybe there wasn't room at the dinner reservation or something. Like, but we take it and go, oh no. And I started to make this scenario much worse by the story that I was telling myself and the reaction that I was about to have to it, and just kind of, rip everybody and say, look, you shouldn't do that without us. That's really highly inappropriate. Kind of thing. And thankfully, Stace and I got ourselves out of that tailspin and went, wait, hang on. People have every right to sort things out. And sometimes to not have everyone in the room at the moment helps.
Yeah.
Okay. Think about the U.S. election and the stories that people are telling themselves around it. I mean, they're almost apocalyptic, many of them, because then they get online and they get in social threads and that sort of thing. But we get into this group, the story that we're telling ourselves, right?
And it's a feeding frenzy. Yeah, because it's an echo chamber of your worst case scenario amplified.
There you go. I like that. It's an echo chamber. Now, sometimes the echo chamber is your group. The groupthink,
right,
or it's media, in the particular media that you listen to, that can do it. But sometimes the echo chamber is just within. Okay. So, gang, this is such a helpful tool to begin to put words to, okay, hold on. The story that I'm telling myself is, and just go ahead and put it out there. This jerk, blew me off to go have a couple drinks with his friends, and now I'm stuck without a refrigerator for 3 more days. Or,
Yeah, right.
Say it out loud. Begin to put some words to the story that I'm telling myself, because where we want to bring this to is super helpful tool around the holidays. Super helpful tool. So what I want to begin to think about together is, what are the storylines that people tend to get into, fall into, tell themselves around the holidays? Alan.
Yeah.
You gave one,
Yeah.
I'm already behind.
Right.
It's not going to be what I want it to be. Can you name another?
John, what's been helpful for me is years ago at a boot camp, you were talking about if your life in this moment were a movie, what kind of movie would it be? Like, would it be a romantic comedy, a tragedy, an action movie, whatever? But you just start to see, like, how do I see my life? And at Christmas in particular, I think I tend to see it as not only is there too much to do, but that it's never going to be satisfying enough. Like, so it's a little bit of a,
so you're not in the Downton Abbey Christmas.
No.
You're in the Chevy Chase Christmas story.
Right, where he's under the other vehicle and it's, he's about to get crushed, but, and trying to put the lights up on the house that one strand is never going to light up. So the rest of the house won't. I feel like it's always going to just be a little bit flat or short of cash, short of ability to get the house decorated in time. And so, if it were a movie, it would not be a movie where everything was going well, but where there was somebody striving and kind of just trying to make it work, even though they loved the holiday, the Christmas season.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. I was reading some articles. So we're coming out of, I think we're moving out of almost a global cost of living crisis. Now, the cost of living crisis is a real thing, but it people still feel some of the pinch of it. Toy sales are down for the third year in a row right now.
Yeah.
And so if things feel tight around Christmas, we're going to tell ourselves a narrative of, this, and maybe as a parent, you go, I'm just so sad that we can't provide our kids what they really want this Christmas. This isn't going to be a good Christmas because of financial things. Or it can be resentment. It can be, doggone it, here we are again. So-and-so spending a lot of money and we can't afford this. And we can get into narratives like Christmas is just expensive and exhausting. And if that's the narrative that we buy into and we embrace it, it's going to be pretty hard to find any goodness, right?
Right.
Pretty hard to find God, pretty hard to find joy.
And even interpreting other people's motive around you, including family, your son's daughter, wife,
my goodness,
parents, whoever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, just men and women, friends, think about the narrative, the story you're telling yourself around Christmas this year. This is going to be super, super helpful because I always hit this collision. I hit this internal collision. I am a romantic at heart. I am a sucker for the holidays. Christmas lights, music, if we get a little snowfall in Colorado, come on. And I have in my heart, in my boyhood heart inside a longing for a kind of holiday experience that usually doesn't come true. And as a child, part of what informed that narrative, both my parents are passed away now, so I can tell some family stories, but God bless them, they're both with God. There's forgiveness there, but it was a pattern in our family that I would never get what I asked for Christmas. And I would be very specific. I'm looking for this particular action figure. His name is, or whatever. I want this particular striped shirt. It's orange. And they would get me a striped shirt, but it would be green. Or they would get me an action figure and it would be like one I'd never even heard of. They were trying. They were busy. Finances were very tight in the home that I grew up in. There was a lot of financial tension. But the narrative that I began to form is that Christmas is never going to be good. Christmas is never going to be what I want it to be. And even in my adult life, I can feel the collision of everybody else is busy. People got a lot to get to, right? There's, work stuff and church things and other families. And I can feel right now inside of me the collision of longing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm already making agreements with disappointment.
Wow. Before
it's even happened,
Yeah.
For heaven's sakes. I've already bought into a narrative to go, it's going to be okay. It'll be fine. It's okay. And that's kind of where I go with it. That's okay. But that's a narrative, and it tends to shape the way I experience things around me.
And
right?
knowing that, so you recognize that now, right?
Yeah.
But even in the recognizing, that's not enough, I don't think, right?
No. And I want to get to the magic in just a moment, because Jesus is the great reframer of the narrative. It can be an extraordinary rescue internally or in relationships or even in like a whole, faith community. It can be in a family. It can be a rescue to let Jesus reframe the narrative. But before we go there, because that's rushing to answers, Henry Nouwen had this great line where he said, answers before there are questions do damage to the soul.
Wow.
So what I'm trying to do is let our listeners begin to go, oh, wait a second, hold on. Right. What is the story that I'm telling myself about the holidays? And then, friends, it'll be really helpful for you to think about particular things like, what's the story I'm telling myself about, the family gathering or the lack of it? What's the story I'm telling myself about my own internal longings and whether anyone will even meet those? Like, okay, this is where we're trying to go. Because these narratives, Alan, these can get really, really painful. When the narrative has been shaped by loss or suffering or loneliness. I remember we're just coming out of the Sacred Romance series, and we didn't tell the full story of Brent's life and his death, but Brent was killed in a climbing accident right after the year after the launch of Sacred Romance. And so the story that we thought was going to happen just ended in terms of a lifelong partnership and that he would be a part of all this. And for the first several Christmases, the story that I was telling myself coming out of grief was Christmas is just never going to be the same again. And what I want to say is mercy to those feelings and those agreements. Of course, in the early years of grief, of course that. But it wasn't true. And over the years, we've gone on to have beautiful Christmases. Okay. But I'm just wanting our listeners to reflect for a moment. I almost want to give everybody a pause for a moment to go, okay, all right, this is a helpful tool. What are the stories I'm telling myself right now? Is it the resignation stories along, it's just the same old, let's just get through it. That would kind of be like a cynical narrative, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be a lonely narrative. Like I'm just going to be on my own again. Nobody's going to call. Nobody's going to invite me over. What are the narratives, gang, that you're already living into? I just want to give people a chance to think about that.
So helpful.
So let's take a moment. I'm literally going to drop a pause into the podcast right now and just let you think about that before we go on to the rescue. What are the stories you've fallen into already for the holidays this year? Okay, so here's the good news. So we're in that small group crisis this year in our church community, and people had met, people were talking about us, or at least this was how I was framing it. And
Yes.
I was upset. I was so hurt and angry about it, and the rescue was some friends who were not involved in this happened to be in our kitchen when this happened, when I got the text saying, "Hey, we're meeting without you,"
Yes.
And they were so kind and gracious to catch our hearts and to say, hang on, let's think about what the story might be. It's not necessarily a negative one, and your emotions are welcome and they're appropriate, but we think you might be buying into a storyline here that could be disastrous. God rescued us. He rescued me from reacting. I could have reacted really poorly. And he rescued us from just tanking personally. And then ultimately, the agreement that I was coming into, the story I was telling myself is, oh, I'm done. I'm out of this group. Not only that, Alan, but the narrative I was falling into was, I am not going to be a part of a small group ever again.
Wow.
I'm
okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
This happens. It happens in pain. It happens in misunderstanding.
Yes.
Jesus steps in, rescues the narrative. Jesus is the great reframer of the narrative. And you look at all the beautiful gospel stories that we love, the story of Zacchaeus, right?
Yeah.
And the Chosen has done such a great job to help people kind of revision these things. The story of the leper, right? That this guy has a narrative, and you are disgusting, and you are an utter outcast. No one sees you, and no one loves you. Yeah. Christ touches him. He doesn't need to touch him to heal him. Heals a lot of people without touching him. He just speaks. But this guy needed to be touched because in the Jewish, culture at the time, you could not touch someone with unclean skin, cancers and leprosy and things like that, tumors of the skin. Christ touches him.
Yeah.
He is reframing the narrative, right?
Yes.
Isn't it beautiful?
It is. And it is just to see that our stories, the interpretation can be redeemed, and then our stories can be redeemed.
Yes.
And so we're not stuck in some Groundhog Day.
Yes.
Every Christmas will be the same. I will be the same.
Thank you.
Yes.
Say it again. We're not stuck.
We're not stuck in a Groundhog Day, meaning you live the same situation over and over again. We can actually have the first different Christmas of our lives this season.
Yes.
If we allow.
If we allow Jesus to reframe the narrative.
Yes.
Yeah. So just look at Christmas, friends. Literally what Christmas is. The incarnation of the living God. Christ, as Scripture says, is the visible image of the invisible God. Humanity had fallen into some really messed up narratives about who God is and what he's like.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And Jesus goes, I'm going to correct that in such a dramatic way that you can't miss it. I'm going to come in person. I'm going to come in humanity.
Yes.
And walk among you, Emmanuel, God with us. It is this wild rewriting of the narrative, right?
Right. I mean, something that really nobody even fathomed up until it happened. Like the prophets of old, I mean, people who were trying to put together, how could God rescue humanity?
Yes.
This was not the expectation.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Right.
And as a storyteller, you got to love it, right?
Oh, it's the twist that nobody saw coming.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. So Christ Jesus, and God your Father, Holy Spirit will help you to reframe the narrative. And this is the province of, every therapist and spiritual director, every friend, your pastor, your priest, anybody you go to say, help me sort this out. What happens in those times is the reframing of the narrative, right? let's hear what you believe. And now let's see if that's actually true, right? So what we're suggesting, friends, is that you use this tool over these holidays in two ways. First off, if you had some clarity during that pause or more clarity coming after you turn the podcast off, as you begin to notice going through the holidays, as you're preparing to catch the flight back home, or the phone hasn't rung and the wonderful invitation hasn't come, as you're just watching yourself use this tool. Well, the story I'm telling myself is, okay.
Yeah.
So use it that way and ask Jesus to reframe the narrative for you. I was praying about this podcast coming in today. I just felt Jesus say two very beautiful things. He said to all of us, he said, let me come to you. In other words, let him draw near. Give him permission to get into the emotions and into the narrative, okay?
Yeah. And
then he said, ask me for the narrative. And this is a thing I just never used to do. I would just buy the narrative that I was in.
Yes.
Like, no, this is what's true. Right. And the new idea is ask Jesus for the true narrative.
Yes.
It's going to be a rescue, gang. But then also, so back to the kitchen, and the men are coming up with, this guy's just a jerk.
Right.
And Kelly's got a merciful narrative. That was really helpful to have her in the room. Okay, because you can use this as a tool this Christmas. You can use it as a tool, maybe with spouses. You can say, honey, the story I'm telling myself, and then fill in the blank. It's a non-confrontive way of raising sweetheart, the story I'm telling myself right now is that you're going to run at such a ragged pace, a crazy pace, that by the time we hit Christmas, you're going to be burnt out, hon. And the story I'm telling myself is that that's just unavoidable. Can we talk about that?
Yes.
You see how helpful that would be?
So helpful.
Yeah.
And it also, it helps you see your own reactions as well as how your spouse is dealing with things and handling things. Exactly. You process together. Yeah. And just pray, God, let there be light.
Yes.
Through you, through the one I love most. If you're not married, through a friend or maybe an adult child.
Yes.
But I think, John, it can be, as you said, such a rescue instead of getting to the end and past Christmas and going, see, it happened again.
That's good.
Because of these ruts that we've just over the years, the ruts have gotten so deep, we just fall into that almost like on autopilot.
Alan, did you know that those ruts actually happen in your brain?
No.
Yes. That what we call, I'm just in a rut, you get into a groove. There is a neural pathway that gets hardened, so to speak, in there. That this is just the story. This is the way I think about things. I always react like this. I always expect her to react like that. Okay? Like you literally are in a rut.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Okay. But we also know that as the brain retells stories, this is so beautiful. It can rewire, and you can ask the Holy Spirit to be involved in that. So what we're suggesting is that this tool might be helpful within family groups. Okay, so maybe to your parents, you've got a family of your own, you feel the pressure every year to get to mom and dad's. Maybe you can use the tool to say, hey, Mom, the story I'm telling myself this year is that we're just not going to please you. You're just not going to be happy. Like, we can't get there until, 4 p.m. on Christmas. I'm so sorry. But the story I'm telling myself is it's actually never enough. And you're already disappointed. And that might, it's awkward, but it might open up a really helpful conversation to either allow your parents or, whoever this is, your small group, to go, whoa, thank you for naming that. wow, I guess I am already disappointed. Or maybe they'll reframe the story for you and go, sweetheart, that's actually not how I feel at all. We are so grateful that you can come at all.
Right.
Or Dad and I understand that you can't make it this year. We understand that. You have commitments,
Yes.
that kind of thing. Maybe it's with the kids and there's a reframing of the narrative with the kids to go, things are tight this year. We're not going to be able to get everything that you'd like. What if we approach Christmas this way and you reframe it to go, some of this is for now, and we'll hold on to some of these desires for your birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Right. And even if we reframe why we're feeling a certain way, like John, I just realized a few weeks ago something for this Christmas I want to do different, which is I grew up, well, let me start with, at Christmas time, I found myself wanting to avoid large gatherings, whether that was extended family, whether that was a big Christmas party. I just found myself not really sure why, but just feeling like it's always going to be disappointing. It's never really that great. And so it was leading more to isolation. And I didn't have a reason why. But looking back at the narrative, I realized a few weeks ago, when I grew up, the family setting was such that people would gather in big groups, but it would never go deep. It was always surface, football games, weather, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And when I would try to ask or go into a deeper topic, it was just met with resistance or confusion, or a little bit of a glance my way, but then back to the football game conversation. So I realized, wow, like these are not settings I can be me or comfortable in, and they just feel disappointing. Well, the problem now, though, is as a grown man, I still was living out of that rut or groove of, oh, there's 6, 7 people here sitting around the table having coffee. I'm just going to go upstairs and read a book because it's just, it's going to be uncomfortable. Well, the reality is it could lead to some beautiful, wonderful conversations. And even if it doesn't, I can still be present and enjoy the people around me. That I don't have to live from that narrative that's decades old, right?
Wow. That's huge.
So I'm excited this Christmas to step into that with fresh eyes.
That's huge. Well done. That's really good. So gang, here's the hope. Here's the thought. I really want to suggest, please don't rush to use this tool immediately with people. Okay. Because you're going, oh, that's so good. I'm going straight home and talking to, so-and-so about this. Hang on. The place we want you to start with is, what is the story I'm telling myself about Christmas? Just personally, just tune in, and then please start with the one who loves you and knows you best. Please, you are friends with the most brilliant person in the universe. Ask Jesus to reframe the narrative for you before you go trying to start, sort it out. And then, use this tool on a human level. It's super helpful. It can be very disarming because you're just owning it for yourself rather than blaming them. Right. You're saying the story I'm believing is this. So it doesn't feel as accusational. Yes, but don't start there. What we're suggesting is start with, what is the story I'm telling myself about Christmas this year, the holidays as a whole? And Jesus, would you come and would you reframe the narrative for me? Like, how lovely will that be?
It's a game changer. It can be a whole different Christmas.
It really, that's our hope for you, everybody. Yes. That's our hope. So we'll be back next week with some of the women and letting their perspective on the holidays and their wisdom in as well.